Hey everyone, and welcome to this Q&A video, which I planned to do 3 weeks ago, because I thought like, hey, doing a quick video is not a big deal, and then it still took me quite longer. I'm sorry for that. But regardless, now I have finally the time to record this, and I hope I can cut this really quickly. I mean, it shouldn't be a big deal since I'm not gonna do a lot of editing. I mean, besides hopefully learning how to display the questions. But yeah, we'll see. Anyways, a couple of people have written me different questions on Twitter or on Discord. I mean, those were the only two sources where you could find about it. And what I'm gonna do is, because people ask me multiple questions in one go, I will just go through all of them and then I'll answer them one by one. So I would say let's get starting. Okay, first questions from Chill IP on Twitter. Hey Heinki, first question. When, how, and where was your first contact with speedrunning? Second, where do you see yourself in 3 years? Third, do you have a pet? Do you like animals? Fourth, how are you? Fifth, all-time favorite game? And good luck for your first YouTube video. So the first question, when, how, and where was your first contact with speedrunning? That was basically in 2013, where I watched a runner called Kelmandu doing a run of I Wanna Be the Boshi. Back then I didn't even know it was a speedrun, I was just looking for the game because I thought it was a sequel to I Wanna Be the Guy, but I didn't know about the fan game community back then. So I basically looked around Twitch and found it, and basically he was the one with the highest viewers and he did a speedrun, and that was my first contact with it. Second question, where do you see yourself in 3 years? This literally feels like I'm doing a job interview, but alright. No, but to be fair, like, I think it's hard to predict where you see yourself in 3 or 5 years. Like, I mean, as I said, like, this is a question I normally get asked in job interviews, so it feels a bit odd, but nonetheless, I hope that in 3 years, everything mostly stays the same, like, with a new job, with a better payment, and that the family is fine, that daughter is doing well, maybe second child? I don't know if my wife heard that, but we will see. And besides that, whatever comes will come. The third question, do you have a pet? Do you like animals? Well, I don't mind animals, and no, I don't have a pet, but I don't want to have pets, to be fair. I prefer to put the time into my child and do stuff with her instead of with a pet, but I don't mind it when I'm at friends' places and they have pets, then I like to play with them, so I don't mind them. Fourth, how are you? Well, I'm doing pretty good, can't complain currently. I mean, it's still Corona, so what am I supposed to say? I can train again though, so that is cool, and besides that, daughter is doing fine, wife is doing fine, so everything's good. Fifth question, all-time favorite game? Well, that is a bit of a tough one because I have a couple of favorite games which come in my mind. So when I think of RTS games, for example, Battle Realms is the first one which pops up in my head, which is an all-time favorite when I think about it. The second one I'm thinking of is Heroes of Might and Magic 3, which is a turn-based game basically, and I've spent so much time in my childhood and even now with it, with the HD remake and the mods, it's amazing. And the third game which comes up in my head, which is a JRPG, is Grandia 2, which I've played way too many times, even as a kid when I didn't know English, and when I knew English, so it is an all-time favorite. So yeah, and besides that, there's so many more coming up in my head, but I would say those three are my all-time favorite. I know it's not that one game, but it's basically three from different genres. Second user, Lo-Fi Lord on Twitter asks, how is it to be that good and perfect in life? Smiley face. To be fair, I don't think I'm perfect or good at anything, it's just, maybe it's my view of seeing it, but I think I'm just a stubborn idiot who doesn't like to give up. And because of this stubbornness and that attitude of not giving up, I push myself many times over my limit, which is not very healthy if I think about it, but at the same time it allows me to evolve or to just become better in whatever I do. And like with everything in life, it's just a lot of dedication, a lot of practice, a lot of training to get where you are. So all I can say is always work on yourself, try to push yourself, and don't give up so easily. Tatsumanic on Twitter asks, hey Heinki, what places have you lived in and how do their breads rank? To be fair, I don't like bread, so I haven't eaten that much bread on different places, and if I count up all the places I lived in, it would be quite long. So in that regards, I really don't know, I haven't eaten that much bread, I'm sorry. Smash the Bunny asks on Twitter, what is more difficult for you, focusing in sports or in speedrunning? I think this question is very interesting because when I think of the speedrun documentary where I was on, or whenever I'm talking on stream or with other speedrunners about it, I always compare speedrunning and martial arts to be very similar. The thing about that is just because in martial arts you practice one technique multiple times to perfect it. In speedrunning, it's you're practicing one glitch to perfect it, unless it's RNG dependent, then obviously you can't really practice it. But the core is mostly the same. You try and practice it until you perfect it and that you save time or that you execute it perfectly without any mistakes, and then you go on. But to be fair, because I'm doing a lot of sports and I'm competing a lot, I think it's harder for me to focus in martial arts than in speedrunning, because if I don't focus in martial arts and I do a mistake, it either costs me a point or I get a hit and the hit will hurt me, so obviously you don't want to make any mistakes. Nonetheless, it doesn't mean that speedrunning is less straining, it is just different because you have a chat where you can interact, and at some point, like similar how it is in martial arts, you get into like an auto mode where you just do your run or do your practice and then you don't think about it. However, while in speedrunning you're just sitting in front of a computer and you can do your run and you interact with chat, which is like not straining, more like mentally straining. When you do martial arts, obviously at some point your body will give up and then you have to take a break, so it is different in that regards. Ripchip asked on Twitter, first, what is the one speedrun trick piece of speed tech you have disliked the most throughout the progression of any of your games you have run? And the second, being a physical active person, what is a typical breakfast like for you to get your day started? So for the first question, I'm not entirely sure which speed tech is coming up in my mind right now because I can't think of any. But the first trick which comes up in my mind is in Deus Ex when we found the new Hong Kong skip, which is basically going immediately to Tong. The problem back then was it was not consistent, and if you failed this trick, you lost 30 seconds and your run was basically dead. And during the discovery of this trick, the only person who could do that was Maxim, and that was like a big bummer. Basically, it killed the entire community because nobody wanted to do a run and just let it kill after 20 minutes. However, later on we found a consistent setup for it, and since then it was not a problem anymore. To the second question, what do I eat for breakfast usually? Well, it's a bit different right now. So back then, when I was preparing for European Championships, I ate like a lot of scrambled eggs with ham and cheese so that I had like a warm meal, because I prefer to eat warm meals than cold meals. But nowadays I eat mostly cereals for breakfast because it's just faster, just get a bowl, milk, bam, done, eat it, and then you have a good start. Zoitsu asked me on Twitter, do you watch anime? If yes, which? And what are your favorites? To be fair, back then when I was younger I watched a lot of anime, like the usual things which were back then in German TV, which is Dragon Ball, Digimon, and Pokemon. After that, I think I watched Death Note and Elfen Lied and some others which I can't remember anymore, but there has been a couple of animes I watched back then. But my all-time favorite is gonna be Hajime no Ippo, which is basically a boxing anime where the guy just gets bullied at school and suddenly becomes the Japanese champion. Although I spoiled so much, no, but it's basically the way how he turned into the Japanese champion is pretty interesting. And also the humor is pretty good, so it's one of my favorite. Like, I watched it many times and I can just recommend it. And the latest anime I watched was basically Baki and King and Ashura, so I like a lot of martial arts type of animes. In regards to animes, I don't really watch them that often anymore, but I mostly read mangas, and very different ones, mostly those kind of level up stuff like Solo Leveling or Tales of Demons and Gods, which is basically like the isekai genre where the guy returns back in time and then tries to take care of mistakes he did or just power levels, and I find those really interesting and like to read them. I won't mention all of them, but because I read a lot of them. Alco on Twitter asked, which was your first on-site marathon and how was it? So my first on-site marathon was in 2014, which was the Games Fest in Berlin. It was the first time for me to be being at an event and meeting other speedrunners who I did not even really know, and I was very excited to meet others and just to show the game because I never did that before on stage basically. And besides that, I met some people, like I knew Shadow Draft back then, who was there for the first time, and many other people who are basically friends of mine now. So it was a cool event, like just meeting up, hanging out with people and just having a splendid evening. And in that regards, I can always recommend go to speedrunning events, even if you don't know anyone. Like when I think of the Games Fest where I didn't know anyone and I just met everyone and basically all of them became my friends. It was the same at ESA. When I went there, I met some people at the airport, then we were stuck there, and then suddenly I had 12 new friends, and then at the event, like, everyone felt like family. Kittymus asked on Twitter many questions. So first, if you could choose a game to play for the first time again, what would it be? Second, what are your 3 favorite countries and cuisines from them? Third, what is your favorite sports to do and to watch? Fourth, what did you study at school, college, university, and did you enjoy it? Smiley face heart. So to the first question, which game would I like to play again? I think it's kind of hard to tell, since when I think about the games I would like to play again for the first time, I played through them multiple times, so it is still the same experience to me. Even though I know the story and I know what's happening, I find it just amusing to just replay them, so I'm not really sure which one I would pick. What are your three favorite countries and cuisines from them? So the three countries which come up in my mind are Malaysia, Ireland, and Sweden. I have been in multiple countries, but I've never really have been there for quite a long time, besides like Sweden, Ireland, and Malaysia. Like I've been there many, many times, so I really enjoyed being there. And when it comes to cuisines, like in Malaysia, there are way too many good dishes. Like I loved most of the food. It felt like every day there was like a new dish I had to discover. And it was glorious. I can just recommend it. And I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce them or how they're called. But there are too many. I'm a bit sorry for my Irish friends, but I don't think has been an Irish cuisine I really liked. It's mostly just fried chips. And to Swedish cuisines, I haven't eaten anything Swedish really. I mean, the only thing I can think of is meatballs, but I think they're more like universal, so no idea. Free, what is your favorite sport to do and to watch? I mean, this is gonna be simple. I do wushu since I'm 6, so I'm going with that. I just love to do this training. It's like different in many ways. You do strength training, you do flexibility training, you do athletic stuff, you do weapon training, you do fighting. You can literally choose so many things in wushu and just put your focus on it. And that is what I love about it. But for watching, I think it is also wushu. But when I think of the Olympics, like gymnastics or diving or any other sorts of sports where you have to showcase stuff, I think it's quite amazing. Like especially when I was just watching Olympics, there were so many kinds of sports I never did before or had no clue about, and it was just fascinating to watch. And also, I think it's a bit interesting because as I'm an athlete myself, if you're on the stage and if you're performing and you're watching people perform, I feel like the adrenaline in my own body is like starting because I know the feeling or I know the exact thing the athlete is going through. So that is really entertaining for me to watch and just see it. And I'm like, oh, yes, now let's start. What did you study at school, college? So basically, I studied computing science and I have a bachelor degree in computing science with a focus of game development. But nowadays, I'm a web developer because the market in Germany when it comes to game development is rather thin and the payment is shit and the working conditions are horrible. And I also couldn't find any job where I lived and I had to live here because I had to take care of my grandfather back then. So I took the first job which was offered, and that was a web developer job. But besides that, yes, I enjoyed studying computing science, but if I think about it, if I would do it again, I would definitely not do it. I would probably do an education in a company because the difference between theoretical learning in university and the stuff you actually do is completely different. Like, what I want to say is it's not bad to study computing science, but if you go into the real world and you learn stuff from 1990, which was Java 3D, and you're supposed to apply for a job with that, obviously everyone will shit on you and say like, what the fuck, why are you doing old technologies? Next multiple questions from Hostile on Twitter are, first, what's your favorite food you've eaten in Malaysia and Singapore? Second, best Deus Ex Human Revolution mission? And third, what's a game you want to speedrun but haven't gotten around to learning it? The first question I kind of answered already from Malaysia, which food I like. There's so many, but if there's one particular dish, now that I'm thinking about it, there was like something like noodles in an egg sauce with, I think, veggies and meat, and that was like my all-time favorite back then. But there's so many good dishes. I like most of them. Seriously, there's only one dish I dislike, and that is what I know, because it looked like puke, and yeah, that was not cool looking. However, I even tried that. It tastes fine, but yeah, I couldn't get around because whenever I saw that dish, I just couldn't eat it. My favorite mission in Deus Ex Human Revolution would be Pike's communication. I liked this part very much in my casual playthrough, and I also love it in the speedrun, just for skipping the funicular and going down this entire level. But I love to explore this huge level of the new station, especially when you go into the funicular and you see like there's another layer of it. And to 3, which game do I want to speedrun but I haven't gotten around it? There has been a couple of games I have on my list which I always wanted to pick up but never had the time to. One of those games was Daikatana and Quake, which I always loved because of the bunny hopping and for being super fast paced. And after I played Half-Life for the first time, I also thought like, hey, learning Half-Life would be sick since it has the same movement. Well, it's not really the same movement, but it's just fast and it looked awesome and I wanted to pick it up, but obviously I don't have the time. The same was with Dark Messiah, which is also another Source game. It's just, I love how fast you can go in them, and that's why I want to pick it up, but it's just tough to find time now that I'm a dad. Ultima Omega asked on Twitter, do you really have a Panzerwagen in your Lederhosen? The Juicy Schinken asked on Discord, is your YouTube content gonna be more IRL related or more gaming related or both? Well, the thing is about my YouTube content, I mean, I mostly just uploaded my highlights from Twitch because I never really took care of it. I just uploaded stuff because I mostly stream. But when I think about it, I want to do kind of like a mixture of IRL and gaming and whatever comes up in my mind. It's just more of the timing issues whenever I have time to take care of. Like when I think of the pregnancy report video, it took quite a while just because I couldn't get the time around. But I like to do actually both, also when people have questions or just want to know something, like when it comes to martial arts or just nutrition. I know a lot about these topics, and whenever people are asking me for advices, I like to talk about them. And I think that would be kind of like a potential to showcase that more often. Weber asked on Discord, have you ever considered doing runs of VR games? Yes, I have considered some VR games. Like when I think of I Expect You to Die, which is like a James Bond kind of game, that looked pretty hilarious, or Super Hot, or even Serious Sam, where there are a couple of glitches thanks to the controls you can take. But it's just very time consuming, and I don't know if I have the time to do that right now. So maybe in the future, who knows? Azijoni asked on Discord multiple questions. First one, how did Corona affect your personal life, workout, family planning, speedruns? Second, when is GTA San Andreas? Third, how does your workout routine look like? Fourth, what is your favorite series and why? Fifth, what are your fondest memory of university? And sixth, what helped you the most in your career? Oof, okay, there's so many things, so let's get them one by one. So to the first one, how did Corona affect my life? I mean, like most people, just not going out and meeting people was kind of shitty, and also that I couldn't work out and all the events being cancelled, it kind of really sucked. Like all the plans I had when going to marathons, to tournaments, everything got cancelled, and so I mostly stayed at home and couldn't do anything. That was also the moment we decided to have a kid, because that was the perfect moment where my wife was finishing her studies and we would actually have time for the kid because everything got cancelled and suddenly we had a lot of time. So yes, I am kinda responsible for having a Corona baby, I guess. Besides that, when it comes to workout, I couldn't go to the hall anymore, and when I was working out outside once with a weapon, someone called the police, so that didn't turn out well. And since then, I was only doing strength training in the basement. And during that time, because I did everyday strength training with a friend of mine, which we did non-stop without mostly doing a break, I gained 5 kilograms and all my exercises increased with a weight, so that was like a nice side effect. And when it comes to speedrunning, I think I had more time to stream and do runs. But obviously, I mostly focused on family planning, taking care of the apartment, also splitting up the rooms properly, and mostly just taking care of baby business. Second question, when is GTA San Andreas? Well, when I have again time. I mean, the run changed a lot since I learned it, because back then when I learned it, duping was just discovered, and many more tricks built up on that later on. And now I think it's like around 4 hours, so it might be worth relearning it. But first of all, I would need to relearn the duping and all the new tricks, which would take a while. And finding 4 hours to do a run while having a kid, a bit difficult. Third question, how does your workout routine look like? I mean, it's a bit different depending on doing strengthening training or doing like wushu training, because I split them up. So when I'm doing strengthening training, I do mostly 4 rotations. That is chest, leg, back, and then arms. However, I don't do that often anymore because I can go back into the hall and train, so yay! But what I did during Corona was mostly I did chest, then leg, then back, then arms, and then chest, leg, back, arms, and so on and so on. Also for Wushu, the basics are mostly the same. So I start basically with a warm-up, then I do stretching, which mostly takes 30 to 40 minutes. After that, I'm doing basics, which is like basic kicks and basic stances. And after that, I'm gonna do my basic jumps and advanced jumps training, so preparation for when I do my form. And after that, depending on what time or which day I have, I do either weapon training for forms or I do my form training. And before the training ends, I mostly do core exercises or weak spots like calves, back, abs or some more stretching when I feel like my muscles are sore, or when I felt like I did not stretch enough, or when it feels just clamped. What is your favorite series and why? I mean, if I could include anime as well, I would say again Hajime no Ippo, because I really like the mix of fighting, humor, and the guy preparing for the fights. It just reminds me of how the routine is as a martial artist when you prepare for a fight. Obviously, it is super surreal and not really like in real life, but I really like the aspect that it shows that what an athlete has to go through for training. What are your fondest memory of university? Well, I think the fondest memory during university was when I started speedrunning, because like an entire new world opened for me. But my fondest memory of university was the moment I got homeless. So yes, that was not a cool experience. So and how it basically turned out, we were in an apartment where mostly students lived in, and it got sold to the government, so we had 1 month to move out. And the problem is you can't find really any buildings for half a year in Dublin, only for a year, because mostly they're year contracts. And because we couldn't find anything in a month, we went into a hostel and lived there, kind of like a barrack style, where there was a bed next to another bed, and we were sleeping with like 14 to 15 people in that hostel. I guess it's not really homeless, but it's not really like you had a home to go back. You had only your bed, and that was basically it. Everything else was not private. It was always shared. However, luckily our university heard about it, and then they helped us out immediately. So we were out of the hostel in 3 days, which was really cool. Last question, what helped you most in your career? I mean, it's kind of funny because the person who helped me the most to get out of my current mindset is the person who asked this question. But basically what helped me out a lot was when I had to switch for the first time my job from one web developer position to another, and I suddenly had to do a lot. Because in my first position I had to do work, don't get me wrong, but it was mostly just work which has nothing to do with developing. And after that switch, I understood what it meant to be a developer, but I was overwhelmed because I never had to do these kinds of tasks. And the step afterwards, when I started to switch the job again and I started into project work, that was basically the moment where I suddenly had that switch popping off and everything was clear, everything was understood, and I evolved again. Because during project work, it was mostly you had to learn stuff in a couple of days. It doesn't matter if you know it or not, but you have only 1 to 2 days, master it, and then help people. And that aspect helped me to get even better as a programmer or as a developer, and that is which helped me most in my career. And also, as I mentioned before, the switch from the first to the second job was like a huge jump for me, which I still thank you very much for. Yano asked on Twitter, did speedrunning influence how you think, act during wushu practice and vice versa? I mean, it's a very similar question to before, but yes, it kinda did, because as I mentioned, I compare martial arts and speedrunning very often with each other, like in many occasions. The biggest influence I had was in speedrunning though, where I took most of my parts from martial arts. Because when I think about it, in martial arts, you practice your technique all the time. You do it similarly in speedrunning. And if you do a performance, kind of like a no reset run, you have to pull through for tournaments. And it doesn't matter what the result is. You try to do your best. And it feels the same in speedrunning when you do a marathon run or if you do a no reset run just to practice. And the mentality helped me to not get salty or angry when I perform badly. Because you will always perform badly at some point. It doesn't matter what you do or in which condition you are. Especially when I think of martial arts. Like sometimes you're injured, sometimes you have a bad stomach. It doesn't matter, you have to perform, so you perform. And in speedrunning it's the same. Like when you do a marathon run, it doesn't matter how bad your run is. You just need to finish it and do the best performance you can. Deza asked multiple questions on Twitter. First, what was your favorite speedrun event to attend to this day? Second, if you had an infinite amount of time to learn a game, which speed game would you love to dive into? And third, as a viewer, which game series captures you the most, both casually and as a speedrun? So for my favorite speedrunning event, I have to think about it, but the first thing which pops up in my head is ESA 2016. Like, I have been to many events so far, and I love all of them. I love to meet and hang out with people, very small ones and big ones. But ESA 2016 was where most people I know and most friends who started getting into speedrunning came all to ESA, and I loved it. It was amazing. It felt like having holidays with friends while you're there for the gaming event, and you go to restaurants and everything, and every event is like that, but ESA 2016 just stuck in my head. So for the second question, which game would I learn if I have an infinite amount of time? I would probably take GTA San Andreas and Metal Gear Rising. Like, I run both games before, but a lot of things have changed in those 4 or 5 years, and I would just love to pick them up again. And in the case of San Andreas, the run is just way longer than any of the other ones, and just practicing and doing the runs there would be really cool if you have enough time. So the games I mostly like to watch casually or as a speedrun are probably the fan games. So as I mentioned before, when I got into speedrunning, it was mostly because of the fan games, and I loved the fan games because of how difficult they are, but also that how interesting the speedruns are, because it's not that easy to execute those glitches or those tricks, and I just love to watch them. But also platformers or shooters are amazing, especially when I think of games with like physics involved. They're also always cool to watch. But in those regards, I don't really watch anything casually when it comes to gaming besides Hearthstone, I think, currently. So I would still go with fan games because I still watch those as speedruns and casually. Alright, phew. There were quite a lot of questions, so thank you very much everyone for submitting this. I am very happy. I was not sure if I get a lot of questions in general, but hey, multiple questions were asked as well, and so I could fill this, so that is very cool. Anyways, thanks for watching, thanks for joining in, hope you enjoyed it. I had fun to record this video. I hope next time I do a video for YouTube, it won't take that long. I can't promise though. But besides that, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time at an event, on stream, on the YouTube comments. I have no clue where, but probably somewhere. And I wish you the best, stay healthy, and bye-bye.